to take a few minutes and for some introductions and introduce some alumni first. As we planned for this occasion, we found that thought that it would be nice if all of the alums could be here, and decided that this would not be possible at this time, and asked to represent the alumni on this occasion. And all four were able to make it tonight. Two have just stepped out, but would like to indicate their names. Mrs. Marjorie Luce Allman and Mrs. Elma Fichter. These were the first two master's degrees with majors in the health science area at Ball State University. And then Mrs. Sandra Garbasi Cradavell, if you'll stand up, Sandy, first undergraduate major in the health science area. And Mr. Michael Harrow, Mike, if you'll stand up, who worked with us in the early planning stages of this fraternity. And we thank them very much for representing the alumni on this occasion. You might want to give them a round of applause. It's a bit risky in giving thanks in identifying people who have worked on different projects, but I would like to indicate the names of some people who have made great effort and have been significantly involved in the formation of Eta Sigma Gamma, both the national and Alpha chapter. And I'd like for these people to stand up. Nancy Kruger, Pat Markey, Diane Mattingly, she wasn't able to be here tonight, Mary Agnes Murphy, Deborah Piper, Judy Van Galloway, Wayne Payne. We thank you very much. We have some other special guests, and some of the people have had an opportunity to meet them at the various tables. I'd like to introduce them at this time. Our colleague and dear friend, Dr. Hester Beth Bland from the Indiana State Board of Health over at this table. She's representing the Indiana State Board of Health and the Indiana State Department of Public Instruction this evening. We thank her for coming. Dr. Elizabeth Nielsen, State College at Lowell, Massachusetts, and also this year is honoring us by her presence on this occasion. She is this year's president of the American School Health Association. We're very pleased that she could be with us this evening. Dr. Nielsen. My sister institution, colleague and good friend, Dr. C. Harold Vinker from Purdue University, representing that institution, and also representing the health education section of the American College Health Association. Thank you for coming, Dr. Vinker. I might also add that the school health section of the American Public Health Association designated Dr. William Bach to represent them on this occasion.
Thank you, Lord.
Dr. Robert L. Carmen, Dean of the College of Sciences and Humanities, sitting at the table in the back. We appreciate his help and encouragement for our Department of Physiology and Health Science in all of our efforts. Thanks for coming, Dean Carmen. And Dr. Robert H. Cooper, Coordinator of Sciences and Mathematics, retiring this year from Ball State University. Been very responsible for the support that the health science discipline has received at Ball State, the environment that it has lived in, and we've appreciated that very much, Dr. Cooper. Thank you for coming tonight. It's now my privilege and pleasure to introduce our speaker for this evening, Dr. Richard W. Burkhart, Vice President for Instructional Affairs and Dean of Faculties at Ball State University. Dean Burkhart received his A.B. degree with honors from Knox College, where he was a member of Phi Beta Kappa and also president of his senior class. He was awarded 3 advanced degrees, 3 graduate degrees from, including the doctorate degree from Harvard University. He has taught in Massachusetts, Oklahoma, and at Syracuse University, where he was dual professor of education and social science in Syracuse University's Maxwell Graduate School of Citizenship and Public Affairs and director of teacher preparation. Of his many memberships and accomplishments, I'm going to cite just a few at this time. He's a member of the Board of Directors of the North Central Association and Chairman of the Commission on Research and Service, past President of the North Central Association of Academic Deans. He's a member of the Board of Managers of the Indiana Congress of Parents and Teachers, and a member of the State Scholarship Commission. We're very pleased and honored that he accepted our invitation to speak at this Alpha Chapter Initiation Installation Ceremony on the Pursuit of Excellence. Dean Burkhart.
Thank you, Dr. Schaller, guests and members of Eta Sigma Gamma. It's a real privilege and a pleasure to be invited to participate with you in this very important occasion, this installation of Alpha Chapter of Eta Sigma Gamma. I want to express my personal thanks to Dr. Schaller and his colleagues for inviting me to participate with you to share this evening, and also my appreciation to Dr. Schaller for his assistance in marshaling some ideas that I might share with you tonight. It seems to me that this is a most exciting event which we're engaged tonight. I never thought that I'd be present at the beginnings of a national honorary. I can remember when I was a pledge in a social fraternity back at Knox College, to which reference has been made already. I don't know whether you do this now in social fraternities at Ball State, but we had to remember the names of the founders. Schaller, Sidowitz, Bach. And then we had to remember all those stories about how they sat around in a log cabin and thought up the symbols. And I often wondered when I was a pledge whether or not that little band of college men had any conception of the fact that their organization would one day grow to spread across the entire United States. I think it's not out of the way to say that it's probably an organization with considerable influence in many colleges and universities in the United States of America. And so I'm wondering tonight, as we talk about Eta Sigma Gamma, whether or not this institution, this honorary society, will grow to eminence too. It's interesting to speculate 30 or 40 or maybe 100 years from now about people looking back to May 1968, and before that, of course, to August 1967. And you wonder what they'll think about the people who had the vision to form this organization and get it started. I think the excitement of this line of thinking is heightened by the fact that this band of students and faculty gathered here tonight represent Alpha Chapter. And if I remember my pledge training, Alpha means first, or the beginning, or the front runners. And so you, gathered here this evening, have the unusual distinction, which is both a privilege and a responsibility, of being the first. If your organization really does measure up to your hopes and your expectations, you will have made a significant contribution to health science and to higher education, and you can be justly proud. But whether Eta Sigma Gamma and the ideals for which it stands really does prosper and flourish depends, of course, on you. And this kind of generalization you can make about any social organization. It depends on the members. But I think it's particularly true of the members of a charter group, the initial members of a new social unit. It will not be enough for you charter members to file away your certificates. You'll have to be very active. You'll have to be dynamic exemplars of this honorary. You'll have to spread the good word. You'll have to spread the news vigorously if Eta Sigma Gamma is to survive. I know that you've undertaken your responsibilities seriously. I was very favorably impressed with the ritual, and I'm sure a tremendous amount of work and thought has gone into that. And it seemed to me that you were accepting your obligations completely seriously. So I'm not concerned about the future of the organization. I'm sure it's destined for great things. You might wonder why I'd be enthusiastic about the formation of another group on the Ball State campus. One might observe that there are already very many. In fact, some people might say there are too many. But looking at it from one point of view, perhaps there are not even enough now. When a university grows as large as Ball State is, there's a real danger that the student, the faculty, and the individual would be lost in the total, in the multitude. Perhaps you know the title, and maybe even you read the book by David Reisman, entitled The Lonely Crowd. Mr. Reisman's idea was that just because a lot of people are standing side by side is no guarantee that they're speaking to each other. There's no guarantee that they have anything to communicate one to the other. There's no guarantee they're anything but a collection with no relationship one to the other. One can be lonely in a crowd. Mr. Reisman's point, and I would develop on it, is that a person needs to belong to something in order to find out what his own worth and what his own dignity are. If you belong to a small group, you can gain strength and confidence from a sort of home base, if you like. And then having gained that strength and confidence from belonging to something, you can then venture out into wider and wider circles with confidence. And as you do move out into wider and wider circles of human relationships, you can grow and grow and grow. In this sense, the large university depends on the smaller units within it for the loyalty and a sense of kinship that's required. Required, that is, if the university is to make any claim at all about being a community. If Ball State favors organizations because it believes that they favor the development of individuals, and through individuals, loyalty is developed to the university, this would be the point that I would want to leave with you along these lines. It's also true that some organizations may be more helpful than others. Academic honoraries such as Eta Sigma Gamma surely are most helpful kinds of organizations. For you know, the highest ideal of a university is that it be thought of as a community of scholars. The community of scholars is defined in different ways, and I think the one that I like the best is taken from John Masefield's poem about the university. I hope you've all had a chance to read it in its entirety. But if you have, I hope you enjoy hearing it again as I do. But Masefield, at the dedication of a new university in England back in 1946, wrote a poem. John Masefield was the poet laureate of England at the time. And one fragment from that goes like this: "There are few earthly things more splendid than a university. In these days of broken frontiers and collapsing values, when the dams are down and floods are making misery, when every future looks somewhat grim and every ancient foothold has become something of a quagmire, wherever a university stands, it stands and shines. Wherever it exists, the free minds of men, urged on to full and fair inquiry, may still bring wisdom into human affairs." It seems to me that this is a useful definition of the university, of a community of scholars. And as I listened to the statements about your purposes tonight, it seemed to me that Eta Sigma Gamma stands for what the university wants to stand for. And therefore, I would say that Ball State University would be proud to welcome Eta Sigma Gamma into its community of scholars. It's probably true that a social organization appears on the human scene whenever it's needed. And perhaps there never was so great a need for an honorary in health science as there is just now. Did you see in this, I was going to say most recent, but I don't read the most recent one. It takes me 2 or 3 weeks to get around to it. A recent issue of Saturday Review, which has in it a cartoon, the baby section of the maternity ward. And the little babies are all in their baskets, and the nurse outside has got one. And up on the wall there's a sign that says, "Caution, this world may be hazardous to your health." You know far better than I that we are, through ignorance and indifference, literally destroying ourselves by ignoring the simplest and most fundamental rules of health. The health science educator must feel like that little man in the ad for the Philadelphia newspaper. You know, the one where everybody's got a newspaper up in front of his face, and this little man is pointing to some catastrophic event, trying to draw attention of the other people to what's going on. And nobody's paying any attention at all. They just go on reading this Philadelphia Inquirer or whatever the paper is. An organization like yours can help to break down the walls of indifference, fill in some of the gaps of knowledge. Eta Sigma Gamma can make a special contribution on a college or university campus by focusing attention on the health needs and concerns of college students. And because it's an honorary, it can attract the attention and the respect of the faculty. The faculty is essentially a conservative group. It's not interested in new honoraries, typically. It's not interested in new disciplines, typically. But there's nothing that will cause the attention of the faculty to come alive so much as a group of good students who have demonstrated their ability academically. The work of Eta Sigma Gamma will, of course, not be completed while you're here on this campus. It'll only be begun. Having learned about health science at the university, the real personal fulfillment for persons like you will come as you have the opportunity to use what you've learned in working with younger people outside, beyond the university, as teachers, as friends, as parents, in any one of a number of relationships. And I expect the need for teaching health science must be greater than it ever was. There's more advertising and there's more propaganda to entice the unwary, the ignorant, the unsuspecting buyer than there ever was before. Modern mobility of transport and modern mobility of media convey materials and ideas at a dizzying rapidity. I suppose there's no community in the United States today that's immune from misinformation, from drug traffic, from excessive alcoholism, anything you want to mention. And just looking around, I suppose on the university campus you could say that simple exhaustion is one of the common conditions of young people. I was going to say young people, but maybe it would apply to the faculty as well. And not only during the basketball season or at the end of the term. I expect you to agree that it's a basic article of faith among teachers, professors, that the best way of preventing young people from maiming, stunting, or even killing themselves is through education. And I suppose we believe that if people are really given the facts, they'll not deceive nor hurt themselves. There is, it's true, some evidence to the contrary. Our friends in psychology have some evidence to undermine this article of faith that I've just mentioned. Of course, that comes out of their experience working with so many people in whom the irrational has gained an upper hand. But I think the optimist, or perhaps the realist, would say that granting that within each of us there is a liberal amount of irrationality, there still is the possibility that when one is aided by good teachers and aided by the facts, a man will become more human rather than less. In this sense, I suppose, anyone who is to be a teacher must first qualify as an optimist. It might be said, at least it seemed to me as I thought about it, that the health science teacher is probably, in addition to being an optimist, a realist, or even an egocentric person. For the realist knows that there are no autonomous beings. You remember Daniel Defoe couldn't do very much with Robinson Crusoe until he invented Friday. My life and yours are exactly circumscribed by the people who live around us and with whom we have to live and work. Their poor health limits our enjoyment, our fuller expression, our fullest development of our own lives. And in this sense I was reminded of the poet John Donne, whose poem Ernest Hemingway used for a title of one of his books. You remember how it goes? He said, "No man is an island entire of itself, Every man's a piece of the continent, a part of the main. And if a cloud be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less. And then he went on to say, and therefore, never send to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. I could put it less poetically and perhaps more contemporaneously if I said, if we don't do something to help the young experimentalists avoid LSD and similar experiences, we will have to somehow pick up the pieces. And therefore, our lives will be interfered with, if you like. In conclusion, I'd like to say again that it's been a real privilege to participate in your program, to have this opportunity to think with you along these lines for just a little while. And I'd like to close my remarks by saluting you as faculty members who have conceived this notion, and you as students who've been selected to be charter members of this new organization. Seems to me that you've done something very unusual in banding together here to create a new focus of excellence. There are never enough on a university campus. You've done something extra in creating a new focus of academic endeavor by bringing together ideas from the older and the more traditional disciplines to forge a new discipline, this discipline of health science. The step that you've taken to form a new honorary in order to attract and inspire outstanding college students who are preparing to become teachers. It's certainly a wonderful and significant event to prepare oneself to become a teacher, to help young people. Most of our students are becoming teachers and preparing to help young people, but you have, out of all the possibilities and out of all the vehicles that are possible, selected this avenue of health science. And it seems to me that that makes a special contribution, for you're helping young people to develop into their fullest, their healthiest human potential. May you, Alpha Chapter, and Eta Sigma Gamma prosper. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dean Burkhardt, for your thought-provoking remarks. They're greatly appreciated. At this time, I'd like to turn the podium over to Dr. William Bach for the charter signing ceremony. Dr. Bach.
Thank you, Dr. Shaw. On August 14, 1967, the Articles of Incorporation of Eta Sigma Gamma were approved and filed with Secretary of State of Indiana. The purposes of the organization and the responsibilities of the organization and the individual requirements of each member were set forth in this document. Therefore remains for Alpha Chapter, the members of Alpha Chapter, to sign the charter officially establishing our chapter at Ball State University. Your signature on this document guarantees to you all the rights and privileges of Eta Sigma Gamma. So as your name is called, will you please come forward and enter your legal signature on the Alpha Chapter Charter of Eta Sigma Gamma. And if I can be assisted in this with Dr. Sinowitz. Edward J. Banis. Mrs. Virginia Blakely, Miss Patricia L. Boating, Miss Brenda G. Brand, Miss Linda I. Campbell, Miss Lana M. Coughlin, Miss Jessica W. Harrison, Miss Nancy A. Kruger, Kent Liebers, Miss Patricia Markey, Miss Phyllis Metzler, Miss Mary Agnes Murphy, Miss Deborah J. Piper, Miss Cynthia Stoller, Miss Judith K. Van Gelry, Miss Vicki L. Westerick, The next three signatures will be entered by our graduate students. Mr. Burr L. Leach, Mr. Wayne A. Payne, Mr. Frank A. Ressler, the next several signatures representing the eligible alumni from Ball State University. Mrs. Elmer C. Fichter. Mr. Michael Harrow. Mrs. Sandra Cradavo. For the record, William Bach.
You'll probably misspell.
My distinguished colleagues, Dr. Charles R. Carroll, Mr. David J. Dunn, Dr. Warren E. Schaller, last but not least, my distinguished colleague, Dr. Robert J. Sinowitz. With the conclusion of the signing charter for Alpha Chapter of Eta Sigma Gamma, we can now say that this organization is now legally founded at Ball State University, and I'll turn the program back to Dr. Schaller.
We're going to have about a 5-minute intermission and then meet right in here for our business meeting. We stand adjourned. 5 minutes.